Good evening and welcome to Flat Earth United Kingdom with me, Nathan Oakley, and allegedly Dave. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm fab, thanks. How's it going with you?
Yeah, I'm super. I'm really pleased that we didn't have to restart this hangout with technical problems. We just sort of got you on with a bit of an ad of a widget and it's all working happily. So I'm delighted. Can't say I'm not.
Brilliant.
So where do we start? We've got loads of different subjects to cover with you. maybe start with Flat Earth. I'll use my opening question that I've used with a few guests. So how did you find out the Earth is flat?
Well, this is a quite kind of well-worn story for me. It's I wasn't looking for it. I was researching something else, actually. I've forgotten what it is now. That became unimportant, actually. But I was researching something else, and I came across a video. I don't know if it was one that, you know how YouTube automatically starts another video? I think it might have been that. But I ended up watching this strange video. It was talking about scientific experiments that I couldn't quite understand. And then it dawned on me, this guy was talking about the flat Earth. And I was just literally just about to reach for the mouse to switch the thing off. And then it started talking about the Bedford Levels experiment and saying how the Earth curves so much in 6 miles so that it's like 16 feet drop at the end. And I'm like, is that how much the Earth curves? Is that really it? I never even considered it. So I started looking at the curvature measurements and the calculation. I thought, wow, that does make sense, because I'm sure I've seen things a lot further than that, and that was it. I was like, consumed by this thing that, all of a sudden, yes, hey, I've got evidence in my own head here that the Earth, appears to be flat. And I don't know if it was the same with you. I spent the next 6 months feverishly looking up every single thing I could find about the flat Earth. And at that time, there was only about 100 videos, maybe less than that, out there.
When was that, you say, at that time? Can you remember when that was specifically?
Oh, it was, I think it was October 2014.
It's been a wee while. Everything else has gone on the back burner, apart from, well, I don't know. We'll get into the things that you're doing at the moment, maybe a bit later on. But has it been a non-stop fest then of flat Earth information, or has it tapered off recently?
It's tapered off recently because, as you said, it's it's taken a back seat to some of the research I'm doing at the moment, which came out of the flat Earth. But for a while, I think it wasn't until I saw Mark Sargent's Flat Earth Clues that I then got the courage to actually say something about it. Because as you know, when you first find out about it, you can't talk to anybody about it because they just think you're crazy. But I was putting all this information together. I wanted to do a video, but I literally sat on it for about 3 months until Mark Sargent's video came out. And then I thought, well, if he can do it, I can. So that's when I put my first video out. And for about a year, I was, fully gung-ho with this. But as I was saying to you a little while ago, the amount of information related to flat Earth has kind of tapered off because, we've got so many thousands of people out there searching for stuff. I think we've found all the obvious nooks and crannies and bits of information about it. So the amount of new stuff, the new sort of, sort of gee whiz stuff has kind of been and gone now. So we're kind of waiting until we have more, I don't know, more sort of exploration, perhaps. We've got so many people looking at this, and so many of us are very clever and very sort of ingenious that people are coming up with new things all the time. The last thing that was interesting to me that was something Jeranism said, actually. One of the things that was difficult for me to find an answer for was this idea that, you know, in the southern hemisphere, the distances are so huge to get from one place to another that there's no way a plane can make, say, Australia to Chile in 14 hours. Okay, so yeah, we've had people redraw the map and stuff, but that's kind of unsatisfying to me because, you know, we're kind of used to the map, and redrawing it might be a bit of a push. Well, it seems a bit of a push to me anyway. But then Jeranism talked about the idea of true airspeed. I don't know if you caught that.
Sure, definitely.
Yeah, and that actually just, you know, is a great answer. You know, there's and I looked into it, and yes, sure enough, there is a jet stream down in the southern hemisphere, just as there's one in the northern hemisphere.
So they get referenced biblically as well, don't they? The four winds.
Yeah, so so you got a jet stream going hundreds of miles an hour. I think the Wikipedia, I hate using that place, but that Wikipedia number is something like 250, 300 miles an hour. So the idea, for those who don't know it, is that a jet aircraft top speed is about 614 miles per hour through the air. Okay, so obviously that's the top speed. But if that plane is in moving air, okay, if the air is moving that the plane's in, then it can still do 650 miles an hour or 640 miles an hour. But it's at the airspeed is added to it. So the air is carrying the plane along, and the plane's going 640 miles an hour in that air. So you get a combined speed of sort of, you know, 1,000 miles an hour. But the jet's still doing 640. Yeah. So that makes sense. And when you couple it to Max Egan taking his flight from Australia to Chile and filming it, yes, he proved that it took 14 hours. But the interesting thing was he had a compass, and that compass said that he wasn't going the direction that the plane said he was going in. So my contention here is that the plane literally takes off, takes a strange course to catch the jet stream, you know, gets that boost to get there in the 14 hours, then takes another sort of strange course to get back on course to the destination. You know,
amazing to think that all of these revelations you're having have come thanks to the courtesy of YouTube autoplay.
Yeah. But that's it. I think we're being led to this information. It's not a psyop, you know. It's referencing some of the things I've found out since. You know, we're meant to start waking up now, and maybe 2012 was the beginning of a period where, you know, the balance tipped and more people started waking up, and it does seem like more people have started waking up since 2012.
Well, that's going to be my next question. Do you think there's been a bit more recently, a normalization in terms of people's comfort level about the subject? In other words, they're more confident to convey the information to others?
Well, I'm still getting the same. Now, these days, I get emails from all over the place. Basically, people saying the same thing. You know, they saw, you know, in my case, they saw my video, and you know, they had a bit of a revelation. But everybody around them thinks they're mad. It's you know, same thing. But the point is that now I'm getting an increasing number of these emails, increasing number of Facebook friends who pop up and say, I've just watched your video, and, you know, I see the Earth flat. You know, it's increasing. And when you sort of, you know, use the methodology that the system used to figure out how many people are thinking a certain way, yeah, if one person contacts you and says, oh, this happened to me, you've got to assume that there's, you know, a certain number of other people who've had exactly the same experience who haven't contacted you. So when you see, you know, a rising amount of people sort of having the same experience, on the back of that, you've got to see that there's a much larger number you know, behind that you don't see. So
a bit like if you've got a Nielsen box and you're representing whatever it is, 100,000 people with your television viewing habits. Well, you're not actually 10,000 people watching TV, but you are representative of a huge number of people.
Exactly. I think not that they listen, but the government are supposed to. If one person sends a letter, the government have got to assume that I can't remember the number, something like 3,000 or something. Other people feel the same way, but just haven't written a letter. Right.
So hence when they say we've had 55 complaints about this, it may seem like a very insignificant number, but it's taken very seriously based on that.
Exactly. That's the idea.
So, I mean, you've had your skirts with the law, if you like. Is that where allegedly Dave comes from?
Yeah, it's basically when I was sort of in the middle of the free man movement, a lot of people were calling themselves commonly known as, because part of this is realizing that you know, you're being defrauded by the use of your name. So by saying you're commonly known as, you're not saying I am, you know, I am David Murphy, you know, I'm commonly known as Dave. But yeah, loads of people calling themselves commonly known as. And I think I was going on to a radio show called Vinnie Eastwood, and I've been on his show a few times. And every time I went on to his show, I was, you know, I was Dave Murphy, Dave of the family Murphy, Dave the Moore. And then I think the third or fourth time he said, okay, what am I going to call you this time? And before he could let me answer, he said, well, I think I'm just going to call you allegedly known as Dave. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I like that. So I've been using that ever since.
I mean, since you've come out the other end of horrible times in the free man movement for reasons you may or may not want to go into, do you feel that flat earth may be resultant in better things to come in that regard, i.e. is the masses finding out that they've been lied to the key to bringing down certain systems that they have in place to control us? Big question.
I think that is a big question, and it's a big answer. Yeah, I think there is a definite shift in humanity, in its movement towards realizing that everything that you see around you is a lie. The whole system, you know, the flat earth, I think is vitally important, because it's a key. It's the key that says, you know what, if they can lie about this, then what else are they lying about? Yeah. So if they can convince us that we're living on a spinning ball, and that right now when you're standing on the floor here, that simultaneously there are Australians who are, you know, upside down. You know, if they can convince us of that, yeah, then literally how gullible are we? They can convince us about anything. And they have, because literally everything about this society is a lie, an utter lie. And yeah, the flat earth was instrumental in that. I think the free man movement is partially showing that to people as well. It's for me, I went through many stages, looking at very many sort of aspects of our life, and then seeing that actually that's a lie as well, you know, because I was at 9/11, and you know, I took that in. I was literally across the water from it, looking at it, and I took it in as real at the time. I had a kind of sneaky suspicion of something wrong, but I couldn't put it into words. And then a few years later, you know, I realized something that I'd never seen before, and I realized that whole thing was a lie. And then it led me into the monetary system, realizing that whole thing was a lie. And that led me into, I think, the law. That's right. It led me into the law and the free man movement, realizing that the law is a lie. The police and the courts and the government are all working together as corporations and all that. And in a kind of non sequitur way, that led me into looking at health and realizing the whole health care system is a lie. It's actually a death care system. And that led me into, and it's been leading me from one thing to another, to another, to another. And each one has just been showing me that it's a lie, you know.
I mean, you started with your use of names, and that's something that Quasi-Luminous sort of blurts out there in a sort of crazy, non-understandable way. He says, you know, you're all lost at sea, you're all monsters, you're all necrophiliacs. And you hear those words, and some people will understand what he means when he says keywords like lost at sea. Maybe you can boil it down for an audience member that's not going to sit through an hour of Quasi-Luminous to get a vague hint at what you're meaning by that.
Okay, well, so it's a big topic, but the idea that you're dead is is part of the trickery here. The Great Fire of London, which we all thought was an accident, sounds like it's actually one of the first major false flags that you know, we're aware of. So the Great Fire of London killed a lot of people, and it was kind of around the same time as the Great Plague, which killed a lot of people as well. So during the Great Fire of London, while, you know, the place was blazing, Parliament actually sat and passed the Cester KV Act, which was written in French so that the English people wouldn't actually get to read it. Yeah.
Can you just repeat that, just so people can look that specific term up?
Yeah, it's called the Cester KV Act. So it's CEST QUI, I think, VIE. So yeah, something like that. Yeah, something like that. And it's Cester KV Act 1666, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right.
So literally what it was saying, you know, just to boil it down, it says that we don't know how many people, you know, are dead. So we're going to call everybody dead, right? And so everybody's dead. So the government are going to take everybody's share of the country, because you're born in this country, so you have a share in the wealth of the country. So the government are taking everybody's share of the country and administrating it, yeah, because they assume you're dead. And there's a clause in the Cester KV Act that basically says that if you present yourself before the age of 7 years old, then we'll assume you're alive now, yeah, and then you can take your share of the country. But they didn't tell anybody, and it's written in French, and you know, so nobody knows about this.
I was told a couple of days ago by Barbie McGill that this is why they would stop addressing you as master at age 7. Is that correct?
Something like that. I don't know. I've just, this is getting a bit vague now because it's been a long time since I even thought about these things. But yes, master is the reason, because as soon as you become Mr., yeah, that's a title that that limits you. It turns you into a function of government, an employee of the government. Yeah. Well, while you're a master, you're actually a master. It means that you've, you know, you can't be prosecuted. You can't be, you know, the government have no, you know, sort of hold over you. The only hold over you they have is that when your parents register you, the word register means to hand title ownership over to whoever you're registering with. So when you're registered, then as a parent, you've just handed your child over to the state, which is why they can, you know, they feel they've got the right to come and take your child if they don't like what you're doing, because the child is not your property. You've given it to the state. So yeah, it's very convoluted.
Maybe just to round this out, then there's a different language very similar to English, which they all speak in. And it has certain terms which are redefined. Maybe you could give us a bit of an explanation of that for the viewer, so that they can get their head around it, and then maybe we'll move on to a bit of alternative health.
Sure. Well, this is part of the trickery. It's word magic. And what they've done is they've redefined virtually every word in the English language, and in a new language called legalese. You know, we've all heard the term, but until recently, we didn't really understand what it meant. It's literally an entire language that looks like English, sounds like English, but it isn't. And when you're talking to a judge or to a policeman, he's talking legalese, you're talking in English, and when you say something that you feel is quite innocent, you're actually usually incriminating yourself in legalese. So one example is the word understand. Yeah, in English it means to comprehend. In legalese it means to stand under, to agree to be bound by. Yeah, agree. You know, so you're basically, when a policeman says, you know, I am charging you with doing 40 and a 30, do you understand? Well, if you say yes, you've just agreed to be bound by that statute. You're agreeing with that this is now a law, right? Because until you consent to a statute, it's not law. Okay, statutes aren't law, but it becomes law if you agree to it. So they get your consent by trickery, basically. Get you to say, yes, I understand. Yes, well, yes, I'm consenting to it. That's it. This is how it works.
And the critical detail is that it is actually, what would the phrasing be? Is it spoken in English or said in English, or is it appears to be English? It's hard to know how to explain what you mean, because like you say, the word understand has an absolute definition in our mind. It means comprehension of the words used, as opposed to accepting liability.
Exactly, because if you look it up in a legal dictionary, you'll find it has a different meaning. Yeah. So when a judge is talking to you, he's talking in legalese. You think he's talking in English, so you respond in English. Yeah. And he accepts your answer as legalese. So it's like you're talking in French to him, but you don't know what the French words are. Yeah, and but he does.
Transition back to flat Earth then in that respect, because you've got a different language that's used when you have anything akin to convincing people that they're on a globe. Rather than using observational methods, you'll use mathematics. In other words, you can change the language that's used to muddy the waters and confuse people. And that's when you said we're running out of material, and we're digging through the cracks, and what you tend to find the cracks are full of are heliocentric nonsense, which has already had in the past, because this has obviously come up before, a flat Earth debunking, and then another layer of heliocentric nonsense smeared on top of that. And those are the cracks which have been sort of turfed out with a trowel, sifted through, examined. But for me, now that you're reaching the sort of tail end of that, we're getting to the point where, how many more nonsense heliocentric flat Earth debunkings can we then debunk again? You run out. Eventually it becomes, you've done them all, and it becomes a bit more normal. There's less scary things around the corner.
But what's interesting is when I did that 12 questions to Neil deGrasse Tyson, funnily enough, so many people popped up and said, oh, I know the answer to this. And they gave me 12 answers. So I started collecting them all together. And the surprising thing is, virtually all the answers are different.
Oh, really? So, okay.
Yeah. Literally, it's like, I've got sort of about 20 sets of answers for everything. I mean, that in itself says that, there's something wrong there, that people don't actually understand what's actually going on.
So that was one of my favourite moments on Flat Earth Debates channel. They had nothing but globers, or whatever the phrasing is that's polite and PC, lots of heliocentric believers, and they're doing exactly that. They're arguing about the curvature maths. It was brilliant.
Yeah. So that's the thing. And what I'm noticing when you're dealing with globe earthers is that you present something to them, and they immediately have to have an answer for it. So they'll make stuff up, or they'll use assumption, and they'll just, rather than a normal person, if you present them with something they don't know, they might go, I didn't know that. I'm going to have to look that up, or I'm going to have to, that makes sense. And perhaps, what about this? Maybe, so they'll consider it rather than, so he's just said this. What can I say to try and debunk it? That's the attitude, and that's the attitude that I don't have any time for anymore. If I say something and you get this immediate kind of pat answer back, that obviously that person doesn't have any first-hand knowledge of, then I've got no time for that person.
Yeah, it seems though that has been ingrained into people. I mean, I'm not condoning it, but by the same nature, you've got to understand that people are told to ridicule flat Earth. They're programmed with the idea that it's ridiculous from school, told that we have progressed from the Philistine ideas of flat Earth to the understanding that we're on a ball, and you are an idiot if you still consider otherwise. They were stupid back then, now we are not. I'm sure someone did an excerpt from Star Trek, and it had them basically saying that they go to another planet and they look at the people and say, well, they haven't discovered space travel yet, they're Philistines. And it's just a bit of predictive programming to let people know, if you think space isn't real, then you are a Philistine. Therefore, people will brace against it instinctively. They don't even realize they're doing it. Why do I have to fight against this? Isn't the question they'll ever ask. They'll just instinctively go with it and tell you you're an idiot and give you that bullshit answer that they've made up off the top of their head based on assumption.
But if you take a step back, literally everything in our reality is exactly the same. We're programmed into one pathway, one view of reality, and as soon as you step off that path, that's when the ridicule comes, and that's when people go, no, you're talking rubbish. And that's what the school system is about. That's why we're stuck in this training camp for something like 12 years. It takes 12 years to hammer that stuff into you. It all makes sense now. Why whenever the government give you something for free, you've got to actually look at it with suspicion. It's kind of like hey, we're going to give you free schools, and they always make it seem like it's an option for you. It's a great option for you. Hey, here's free schools. And eventually it's, you better take your kid to school or we're going to prosecute you.
Yeah, there's fines. I don't know if that's true in any other part of the world, but certainly here, if you don't send your children to school, you are fined.
Yeah. So you realise that all along it's not been a benefit to you. They made it seem like a benefit, but really it's something that's mandatory, that they need everybody to accept and do.
I'm going to say two words which you might remember. Do you remember the WAG van?
Sorry?
The WAG van? WAG
van? No, I don't know.
So there's a van that used to go around rounding up school kids that were wagging it from school.
Oh no, that's you're probably using some local term.
Could be, yeah. We're rounding up the kids that are playing hooky from school.
Oh well, what I thought you were going to say was I did a post on Facebook and on my website at one point about predictive programming, and not only predictive programming, more how they make us accept, or okay, step back. They literally get our consent for something before they implement it. They have to get our consent. I think it's a karma thing, not in the sense of the Indian karma thing. It's like one of the rules of this place is that what you put into it, you're going to get back to you, sevenfold. So they can't just impose stuff on us. They have to tell us about it and wait for our consent. And silence is considered consent. So the thing about children that you sparked a memory of for me is that the film Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Remember that?
Sure.
Do you remember there's a very dark bit in that film? Do you remember it?
I watched it when I was a very small child.
Oh, okay. It's the child catcher.
Ah, yes, sure.
Yeah. Very dark, you know, the child catcher catching the two little blonde kids and, you know, enticing them into a little jail cell, little cage that's made up to look like a sweetie van. Very dark, right in the middle of that sort of happy, you know, smiley film. What I found interesting was that Ian Fleming, you know, of Bond fame, he was the one who wrote Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. There was no child stealer in his book. Disney put it in there, right? Yeah, interesting. Why would they do that? Interestingly, after Chitty Chitty Bang Bang came out, that's when child stealing by the state really just started ramping up. Sorry. So essentially, that was in the film so that people would agree to it. And how you agree to it is, okay, you see the film, it's a fun sort of family, you know, happy film, except it's got that dark bit in the middle. But you look at the film and you say, it's a great film. You enjoyed it. So, you know, thumbs up. But, you know, you agree to that film, you agree to the whole of it. So you're giving your consent to child stealing by the state. And I said, as soon as that film came out, that's when, you know, this social services, you know, stealing of children just ramped up because we agreed to it. And that's how it works.
I mean, it seems that they predictively program the latest generation with video games. That's their preferred method. And it's nice and isolated from the adults.
Yeah. In the past, they used other methods. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there was a book called Futility and the Wreck of the Titan. And it came out in, actually came out, I think it's 1898 or something like that. And it was about an unsinkable ship that leaves England on its maiden voyage and hits an iceberg, has too few lifeboats on board, and literally it's the whole Titanic story 14 years before the Titanic sailed. Yeah. So, I mean, the book was the mass media of the day. Yeah. So, literally, that predictive programming has been going on for a long time.
It's gone to a whole another level recently because they're predictively programming people with the faking of the moon landings whilst leaving in place the ideas of space. So they're taking it to a whole nother level because of, I don't know, I can only really phrase it this way, but what seems like a monumental cock-up with the moon landings, maybe not. These things tend not to be, they tend to be planned, but in which case you would have to accept, if it is planned, that it was planned to be discovered as a fraud, which kind of is so out there, you know, but that's what they're doing at the moment. They are literally predictively programming people that they are going to reveal that the moon landing was a fake, which we all know and love anyway. We know that it is a fake, but for the normos, it's not. It's widely held that people have been to the moon and walked around up there. That's what most people accept.
Yeah. But they've already revealed it, and more than that, they've actually revealed it with a cover story. Yeah, you know, we know as flat earthers, we know that they had a definite reason for going to the moon, and it wasn't anything to do with the Russians or you know, discovery or anything like that. It was just to make sure that we all know that you know, we're living on a ball. But the cover story, there was a film called Interstellar. And right there, you know, right in that film, they said, well, you know, the moon landing was faked so that because we were fighting the Russians, we were sort of competing with the Russians, and we faked the moon landing so the Russians would actually exhaust themselves trying to catch up with us. That is revealing the truth with the cover story that it's all about competing with the Russians. Yeah, so
and the Cold War itself complete nonsense on a different level. We won't go to that level, but you know what I mean. It's using an existing narrative that people have already got acceptance of and understand, the Cold War, to plant the seed of deception with the moon landings with a legitimate reason. What's the words? Plausible deniability.
Exactly. And you know, this whole methodology was written down in this whole, I don't know if you've come across it, the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. You know, it tells about lie upon lie upon lie upon lie upon lie, and that's what we've been peeling away in the Flat Earth movement. You know, been peeling away at the lies to just find another lie. Then we say, oh, that's a lie as well. Peel that back, and oh, there's another one. You know, and
it makes you wonder with the Titanic. What was the, obviously at the time you can't really go back. We haven't got a back in time machine, so to see what the predictive programming or what the purpose of it was with the Titanic. I mean, was it to terrify people about travel? I mean,
well, I do know that the people behind the Federal Reserve basically gave tickets to all the people who objected to it. So most of the people who objected to the Federal Reserve were on the Titanic.
A lot like some of the plane crashes that happen.
Yeah. So this is this kind of, I have to sort of step into speculation here, in speculation mode here. And I don't know if you've come across the Mandela effect.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't. Your answer there tells me what you think about it, but I used to think the same way until I saw something that wasn't in my reality. I know for a fact was not in my reality. But I have to believe that with all this predictive programming and the way that the actual events come about, it isn't that they plan it meticulously ahead in 14 years in the future, and then write about it so that so they assume it's going to go to plan. It seems like they have foreknowledge of what's going to happen, and with that foreknowledge they start planning around that foreknowledge. I know it sounds crazy, but this is something that's starting to percolate into my head here. I know the reason I know that the Mandela effect is real is because I was a Star Wars geek. Okay, before that film came out, I consumed every piece of marketing that I could find. Yeah, I got the album before the film came out, and it had pictures on it, and I got everything I could find. Everything I saw about R2-D2 and C3PO, I'd be like glued to the television, you know. When that film came out, I watched it something like 16 times before it came out on video. I know every single line of that film, even the Huttese, you know. Yeah, I can go, yeah. I know every single line, if there was a pixel out of place, I'd know it. Yeah. When George Lucas brought out the DVD and with all the CGI stuff in it, I could pick out every single time it differed from the original film. I do not remember C3PO having a silver leg, but nonetheless, I go back and I look, he's got a silver leg now. That was not in my reality, and there's nothing anybody can say to convince me otherwise. Yeah.
I could have a go.
Yeah, you could have a go, but as I said, I know everything about that film, and I know for a fact in my reality, C3PO did not have a silver leg. He was all gold. That's it. So
all gold in your eyes, but that could be down to the equipment it plays on, the projection screen. It could just be poor contrast levels.
I watched it on video, on Super 8. On DVD, I had so many pictures of C3PO. I was going to make a C3PO suit, basically. Yeah, I started designing this suit. I looked at every single detail, the detail on the side of the legs. I looked at detail. I would know if the, you know, in my reality, if he had a silver leg. He did not. So take it for what you will. As far as I'm concerned, something has happened that, you know, that whether they've gone back and changed everything, I don't know, but yeah, something has happened.
Well, I've got a way to get out without having to argue with you about it, which is great. We've been predictively programmed with a lot of these ideas. Now, to my knowledge, it's only based on what I've seen on TV, obviously. It's from the sort of late 70s. And you've got lots of ideas of parallel universes, time travel, all of the things that have now led up to the experimental scientists telling us exactly the same details coming out of CERN. And then lo and behold, you have people tying CERN to the Mandela effect. It just feels wrong. It feels like we've been led into this so that we're all quite comfortable with these ideas and notions. But I don't know. It's hard not to get into a row about it because I just don't. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been because before I got into you know, flat Earth and looking at different things, I was essentially, you know, a scientist. You know, I believed in science. I spent ages learning about physics and you know, learning about relativity. You know, my favorite book was Nigel Calder's Einstein's Universe. I read that about 4 times. I feel I've got a handle on relativity now that I know it's bullshit. No, but you know, I understood quantum physics as much as anyone could understand it. Now, assuming quantum physics isn't all bullshit, and it doesn't seem to be, the answer to the Mandela effect and why it's around, and this is again my speculation, they're talking about parallel universes, and every moment of time, there are sort of an infinite number of parallel universes spawned from that moment, which I've got to say is ridiculous. Okay, but what there is, instead of parallel universes, is parallel probabilities. Okay, so at every moment there's a spectrum of an infinite number of possibilities and a finite number of, well, not finite number, there's a whole set of probabilities that are more likely than others. Just like with a double slit experiment, you see this kind of these lines on the wall. Those lines indicate the most probable spots for the electron or the light beam to hit. Yeah, the ones where it's dark are the least probables. Yeah, so you've got this at every moment. You've got a smear of probabilities, and some are more likely than others. So
a bit like the infinite improbability drive in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or the Hollyhock drive in Red Dwarf.
Right. Yeah. Well, improbability drive. That's a good analogy there. That so at every moment there's a smear of possibilities and probabilities, and only one of them gets collapsed into reality. Okay. But there is this infinite array of probabilities. So what if? Okay. And sorry, I'll finish the point. With that array of collapsing of one probability. Okay, that doesn't just come with the next step in the future. It also comes with a line going back into the past to account for that probability. Yeah. So what if CERN and the D-Wave computer, and you might want to look into what that is. A D-Wave computer is a quantum computer, which basically works by looking at a stack of probabilities using the quantum effect, basically being able to choose the right answer by going into getting the right probability and bringing it back. I'm not really explaining it very well, but rather than
you did a good job.
Okay, rather than, you know, calculating in a linear fashion, right? Realizing that there's a stack of probabilities, and amongst that probability stack is the right answer. So you can actually just go in and grab the right answer from essentially a different probable universe. So literally, I think between CERN and their quantum computers, they're actually, you know, bringing out a different probable reality, or probable sort of reality to collapse into, different probability to collapse into reality. And with that probability comes a different timeline that leads up to that probability.
I'm glad you drew the skew into timelines, because, you know, this travels into in the predictive programming.
But what I think is happening now is with this Mandela effect is that, and this actually runs into the research I'm doing at the moment, is that they're making changes to the timeline, like, I don't know, stopping somebody going to work one day so he never does something critical, and then, you know, something gets changed. And what we're seeing is the ripple effect of that change.
Like in Terminator.
Like in Terminator, or like some of the films that they're telling us what they're doing. Yeah, they make a change, but we don't see that change. We don't see that that guy didn't go to work, and because he didn't go to work, you know, this thing didn't happen to stop something else, and so on and so on. But what we do see is, because that guy didn't go to work, you know, his wife, who is a graphic designer, didn't go to work as well. I had the day off, and then changed her mind about a logo, and the logo got changed.
This is where we veer. So up until now, I'm with you all the way. But my notion is that they have predictively programmed us with the acceptance of these understandings that timelines can change, that things can change. But I think that they just change stuff, literally and physically. You know, it's getting more and more to the point these days where libraries and books and physical data that's in your possession is becoming a thing of the past. And you've got people like Theoropothesis saying, keep data. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean a book, but, you know, if you've got a CD-ROM with a book on it, that's yours, it's in your possession, it's never going to be physically changed. All your cloud data, well, that's easily open to manipulation by anybody. Same with the internet, you know, it's easily changeable. But if we have the ideas programmed into us that, well, no, you know, this book that now shows Antarctica completely differently to how you remember, well, that's because maybe the timelines have changed. I think we're being softened up to those notions. I mean, I know I'm being argumentative, and that isn't my intention.
No, that's quite, you know, quite all right, quite normal to think that way. But my research lately is about human history and the Bible. And okay, when you look at the Old Testament, it basically is written as though it's written by somebody outside of space and time. Yeah, the whole of our reality timeline has already happened, as you know, according to the Most High. Yeah, it's already happened. It's like a book. It's already been written. Okay, you can't really change anything, and we are having to plod through the book a page at a time. Okay, what it basically says is that I think it says something like, you know, the enemy will seek to change times and seasons. Okay, that can be taken in several ways, but what I'm seeing is that things are being altered, because if you imagine this as like a chess match between, you know, the creator and the enemy, yeah, the other fella, essentially, according to the creator, everything's been done, but the enemy is trying to change that. He, you know, Satan basically is trying to win this. Okay, so the idea is that he's going back and changing stuff so that he can win. I know this sounds really crazy and that, but again, they tell us things in films, and I like to look at the film series Terminator. Okay, well, there's 5 films in Terminator, and the first film is well, story of how humanity gets almost completely wiped out. Okay, that's the first termination, which was the flood. And in that film, there's a scene where there's skeletons underwater. That's kind of like a nod to saying, oh, that's a flood. Terminator 2 had a kind of little tagline that goes with it. Do you remember what that was?
Judgment Day.
Yes, this is what the next judgment that's coming. That's what it's called, Judgment Day. And the first scene in Terminator 2 is fire, nuclear fire. And Judgment Day is going to be fire rather than water this time. Okay. The next film is Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. Yeah, we're seeing that now, transhumanism, this push to merge with machinery. Okay. Terminator.
It's got an example of, although it's not the Large Hadron Collider, but in Rise of the Machines they have the, I would call it predictively programming, but it shows the notions of a particle collider. I think they turn it on and she ends up getting trapped against it.
Yeah, they could have done anything there, but they had to have the mini CERN thing going on there. So Terminator 4 is Terminator Salvation. Okay, so you follow the logic here. They're going to merge with machines. It's going to be their salvation. Terminator 5 is Terminator Genesis, new beginning. Okay. Now there's a tagline, there's a phrase that's used in every single film. Every single film, it has this one phrase: the future is not set. Yeah. This is what they're saying. The future, the whole story is written already, right? They're saying the future is not set. We can mess around with the timeline and we can change the future. This is the battle that's going on right now. And when you find out that some of the phrases or some of the verses in the Bible that everybody knows these verses, but when you go back and look, you'll find that they're different. They're no longer the same. It also says in the Bible that in the latter days, people are going to look for the word and they're not going to find it, because maybe they're going to be changing, everything willy-nilly, and personally, again, before I started looking at the Bible, and the flat Earth basically pushed me to look in the Bible, there was a lot of things that I thought I knew that now suddenly turned out to be completely different. And the odd thing is that when people get it wrong, they all get it wrong in the same way. So it's not that it can't be that people are misremembering this. It's that everyone's getting it wrong in the same way. But it never was that way. Like, everyone remembers the lion shall lie down with the lamb. But no, it's not. It's the wolf should dwell with the goat or something. I can't remember. But it's a wolf now,
Again, when you say things like that, I remember what I would call intentional misleading statements. So again, back to Red Dwarf, they have Silicon Heaven, and the robot character says the iron shall lay down with the lamp, implying about the electronics that go to Silicon Heaven. And it's just a way of making you misremember, or making the masses misremember. If it's constantly misquoted, people will remember it incorrectly. I thought my heart sank when you said Star Wars, because I know the example I thought you were going to come out with, which was Luke, I'm your father. That is the misnomer example from Star Wars.
Yeah. I didn't really like Empire Strikes Back so much, so I've never watched that as much. So I couldn't remember myself which way that was. But it's interesting that James Earl Jones, the guy who actually said the line, remembers it the other way.
As Luke.
Yes, he remembers it as Luke, I'm your father.
Oh wow!
He was in two interviews where he said the line "Luke, I am your father" twice.
But wouldn't you say that in and of itself would contribute to the masses thinking that that's how it's said, because he would have said it in that occasion. I just know so many people. I'm a real movie fan, and like you with Star Wars, I would watch movies again and again and again and again. But lots of people would say, "Oh, I know that movie. I've got that movie," and in reality, they may have been to the cinema and seen it, loved it, and gone out and bought the DVD, maybe watched it once, and then it goes on the shelf and gathers dust. But they assume they know the movie inside out because they loved it so much.
Yes, but you know, the good example of that is Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. I mean, nobody,
Magic Mirror.
Nobody will remember it as Magic Mirror on the Wall. Yeah, you do. You say you remember it as Magic Mirror on the Wall.
So did my wife. I always run them by my family, and they normally repeat back the correct version. That's the thing with Mandela.
Okay. I've not met anybody who says they remember it as Magic Mirror. You know, when I first heard about the Mandela effect, I was testing people, and nobody remembered it as Magic Mirror. And when I told them that, they were going, "No, that's rubbish." You know.
You could go through the list. I remember the last person I had this conversation with, it was Sex in the City. I'm like, what are you talking about? But I was, at the time, I had a girlfriend that was a fan of the show, was therefore I watched the show, and you know, she's writing her diaries, and for the namesake of the show, she's got the same title of the show as her article, so she says it all the way through. If you've just seen it in the TV listings guide, you'll get it wrong. Yeah.
Well, again, I never watched that rubbish, but
yeah, garbage. But what can you do?
Yeah.
Let's move the topic on from Mandela to alternative health. So, urine therapy is something that me and my wife have experimented with recently, off the back of a conversation that you and I had, and a few other people. But you and I were on, I think it was Doomweaver's channel, on Robert Shortman's channel, and you were explaining some of your experiences with urine therapy. And my wife has experimented with baby urine, because we've got a newborn baby, and I am astonished. It is like the miracle of you can see I'm stuttering away. I'm amazed.
Well, that's the usual response, actually. I've typically, when I tell people, well, this is what it was in the past, when I tell people to do it, you know, they'd be incredibly resistant, and you know, I'd have to spend a while trying to convince them to do it. But then they sort of grudgingly do it, and you know, within a couple of days they come back to me and say, "It's amazing! I tried it, and this happened, and that happened," and you know, I'm like, "Yeah, see, you know, no, it's amazing. It's because we should know all this. We should know that you know, that this is our medicine. This is a food supply. This is our water supply. You know, if we need it." You know, there are things that we should.
Getting the definition between waste and excess across the people.
Yeah, that's the biggest stumbling block with people. You know, they assume it's waste, and they equate it to poo. You know, but that's the point. It's not waste at all. You know, how it works is the blood goes to the liver, and the liver takes out all the waste, all the pathogens, everything that shouldn't be in the blood. You know, the liver takes out, and the purified blood then goes to your kidneys, and your kidneys are there to keep your blood in perfect balance. So if you've got too much water in your system and water in your blood, well, obviously the blood being too watery isn't going to be as efficient. So the excess water gets siphoned off into your bladder. Same thing with vitamins. So most people know if they have too much vitamin C, well, it's not going to do you much good because you end up weeing it out. It's because, again, the kidneys are taking the excess vitamin C, storing it in your bladder. Same with, you know, enzymes, hormones, you know, all the good stuff, all the beneficial things in your blood literally get stored in your bladder. And while it's in your bladder, sometimes your body realizes that it can use that stuff, so it will reabsorb it. So many people have had the experience where they've been dying to go to the loo, and then they get distracted, and an hour later you're like, "Oh, I don't need to go anymore." Have you had that before?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
well, that's because while you were being distracted, your body's gone, "Oh, I can use some of that," and it's reabsorbed some of that urine, and now it's taking the pressure off your bladder. So it's amazing stuff. And you know, once you realize how powerful this stuff is, you will resent pissing it down the loo, you know, because it's liquid gold.
I had a look at you before your do you call it a urine fast?
Mm-hmm.
I had a look, no offense, but you looked much worse than you do now. Let's rephrase that. You look miles better now than you did 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think there's a video on my channel called The Interview with Simon, and I'm on the couch. I look like Jabba the Hutt. And if you look carefully at this, me on the couch there, you'll see that I'm breathing like this because literally I had the lungs of a 70-year-old at that time. You know, they were destroyed through asthma, years and years of asthma, years and years of spraying that stuff down my throat. And yeah, my lungs were destroyed. Now my lungs are back to normal. They've repaired themselves. And it's funny, what I've realized when I've started doing videos is that now I don't have asthma anymore. And now I'm not struggling for breath all the time. My mind still thinks I am. So when I'm talking, when I'm making videos, or when I used to make videos, I play them back and I notice that I'm breathing in odd places because I think I need to breathe. Does that make any sense? Because I'm used to having to gasp for breath. But I'm noticing when I do a long stretch of speaking, I don't do it so much now, but a while back, when I talk for a long time, I'd be punctuating it with breaths when I didn't really need to. Yeah.
So you physically increased your lung capacity, but your mental state says, need to pause here, otherwise I will run out of breath.
Exactly. But there became a point where I started to realize that what was happening, and I'd have to start remembering that's what I'm doing, and then I kind of got out of it. So it was very interesting that I was doing it though.
So give us before we move on to breatharianism, give us a brief rundown of what you did on your urine fasts.
Okay, well, I only did one urine fast. It was a 30-day fast. There was a breatharian experiment, but that was different. So the urine fast,
We've lost your mic, I think.
Oh, have you?
Oh, no, there we go. Just okay. Crackled a bit and we lost it for a second.
All right, I think I've got dodgy connection on here. Yeah, so the urine fast, I prepared for a couple of weeks with that. I was drinking twice a day. And then the week before I started, I literally started drinking everything I passed while still eating. And then when I started the urine fast, I just stopped eating. I went through about 4 days of finding myself in front of the fridge, you know, going, oh, no, I don't need to eat anything, you know, because I still had that urge to eat just out of habit, really. But after the 4th day, I found that the appetite just disappeared. And that 4th day was really important because I went out for a walk, and halfway through this walk, I got this urge to run. And now with my asthma, and I had a pain in my leg, my left leg, from an Achilles tendon operation, and I had nerve damage in the left side of my foot. So I didn't run very much, and if I ran 100 yards, it'd take me a few days to recover. But I ran for half a mile, and I got to the end, and I was like, I'm still breathing. What's going on? You know. So in 4 days on this fast, not only was my lungs sort of rejuvenate, but the pain up the back of my leg and the nerve damage disappeared. I had that for 4 years, literally 4 years of almost limping around, and in 4 days they were gone. In the first,
can you give your mic just a quick fiddle, because we're losing a lot of what you're saying, because we have got it's getting a bit worse. It's really good information. I just don't want any of it to get lost.
Okay. How am I sounding now? Is that Any better?
Bit better.
Okay, bit better. All right. Yeah, it's got something dodgy going on. Anyway, yeah. So the 4 days, all this amazing stuff happened. After about 18 days, I decided to do an experiment to see if the energy that I had, you know, which is contrary to what I expected. You know, I thought I was going to be sort of dying because not eating anything. The energy, I thought, well, I'm going to test if it's real energy. So I scheduled a whole day of work. You know, I went out and I built a geodome. I literally carried all these like 180 pieces of wood, a few hundred yards to a green. Assembled this geodome. I was climbing all over it, measuring it and stuff. And then I took it all down, carried it all back. I did some yard work as well, and you know, lots of lifting and carrying. And at the end of the day, I was like, I was still bursting with energy. This was 18 days into not eating anything. And around about that time, my girlfriend hadn't seen me for about a week, and she came round and she was like, "Where have you gone?" I basically lost so much weight in that time. I went down 7 belt notches. I wasn't expecting to lose weight. I know that sounds crazy, but I wasn't actually expecting to lose weight. So I didn't weigh myself. I didn't, you know, sort of even think about that. But literally, I went in 7 belt notches. I went down from, I was something like, and this is crazy because living in America, I can't do weights and measures anymore. I think I was something in the region of 200 and something pounds, 250, 280 pounds to start with. And I went down to about 100 and 106. I can't remember. I went down a lot.
You went from something like 20 stone to something like about 11 stone.
Yes, something like that. I can't do stone and pounds anymore because living in America just mixed me all up. I can't do Fahrenheit and centigrade either. So yeah, I just lost all this weight. And you know, I came out of this 30-day fast a different person, literally a different person. I went in sort of fairly sick, fairly sort of old and tired. I came out a completely different person. So yeah, I was amazed. But the second one wasn't a urine fast. It was an experiment about breatharianism, to see if I could go without eating and drinking. Well, initially it was going to do it for a year. But yeah, that was the idea. But I ended up stopping it after 60 days for social reasons, really. At the time, I sort of entered into a new relationship with somebody who was a raw vegan, and she actually wanted to do the experiment with me. So I kind of backed down to raw veganism again, you know, in hopes that she'd catch up, but it didn't work out like that. So
I remember the last time we spoke, you explained that people get very uncomfortable when you're around them not eating or drinking.
Yeah. In the middle of this breatharian experiment, I was round up at my best friend's house, and I was staying there a few days, and literally I'd sit at the table with them chatting, and they'd serve dinner, and I'd say, you know, sorry, I don't want anything. And I'm sitting there talking, and they're like, oh, go on, have something. Go on, got to try something. Try this. And they bring stuff out, and what about this? You'll eat this, won't you? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I can't. So I said, look, next time, look, I'll just sit in the other room while we're having dinner, and just, you know, so everyone's okay about it. So I sat in the other room, and like a minute later, it really like, Dave, you got to come in here. Come in here. You can't sit out there while we're eating. So I'm
glad you said that.
And in the end, it was like, oh look, I'll just have a piece of garlic bread just so you're happy. And I was nibbling on this garlic bread while they were eating, and they were happy about it, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and it's not just, you know, this idea of appetite sneaking up on you. It's other people Eating and drinking is bound up in this society, in our culture. You know, there's hardly a single activity you can do that doesn't involve eating and drinking, you know, either during or afterwards or before. Yeah. So yeah, it's really bound up in the culture, so it's difficult to get out in that way.
So how long did you do the breatharian experiment for in the end?
It was 60 days. I did a video at the end of the 60 days, just to say that I'm stopping because of this and that and the other, but I could have carried on. I wasn't feeling any negative effects whatsoever. The only effects I was feeling were positive ones, you know, just increased energy and vitality. You know, it's just amazing.
Extremely cool stuff. I do want to round out shortly, but can you tell us about how you came to be on TV talking about flat Earth?
Oh, it's yeah, so it's kind of a boring story, really. It was the guy Malenko had watched my video, "The Biggest Lie of All," and he wrote to me saying, you know, he liked the video. Would you like to come to Macedonia and talk about it on television? I'm like, okay. so I went over, kind of expecting it was going to be like a rinky-dink, you know, cable access show. You know, 5 people and a dog were going to watch it, and maybe even sort of a camera in the guy's basement. I didn't know, yeah. But I was on the plane and sitting next to a Macedonian guy, and he said, "Oh, what are you going to Macedonia for?" I said, "Oh, I'm going to be on a television show." And he said, "Oh, who's that?" I said, "Malenko." And he went, and he stood up on the plane and went, "Hey, everybody, this guy's going on Malenko." And I'm like, "What?" It must be a bit bigger than I thought it was.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So I was like, "Oh, maybe what am I in for?" And yes, sure enough, it was, you know, national television, you know, big studio, it was, you know, all already set up and everything. And yeah, it turns out that this show is the most watched show in Macedonia, and it also gets broadcast across all of the former Yugoslavian countries. So their viewership is something like 11 million people. So yeah, it was a bigger deal, and you might notice in the video that I at the first I was a bit sort of overawed by it. I was stuttering a bit, and you know, I kind of settled down afterwards. But you know, I was just literally overawed. I wasn't expecting it to be such a big deal. You know.
Did you know when you went in? I mean, we've talked about the ridicule that we received. Did you know that it was going to be a fairly, how can you say, a pleasant show rather than one where they rip you a new one?
I knew it was going to be a pleasant show because I spoke to Malenko beforehand, and he's basically on board. You know, he's like, yeah, I've seen this, and yeah, I get it. I watched your video, and yeah, got it straight away. So I knew it was going to be a fair shake, really. Now, most people have seen the videos that have been edited so that you don't hear the Macedonian, but Malenko, you know, gave me some kind of tough questions because he didn't tell me what he was going to ask me beforehand, so it was all kind of off the cuff. So yeah, he wasn't that passive bloke who just sat there while I just, you know, blurted all this stuff out to him. He was asking questions. He was interjecting with clarification and stuff. The entire video is actually out on the web, but obviously it's in Macedonian. But yeah, it was he was a really good host, and he did a good job in himself. But since then, I've got lots and lots of Eastern European friends now.
Is that so?
Yes. After it aired, I just got lots of emails from people saying, yes, sorry for my English, but I just watched you on television. Yeah. So we don't know what's going on in Macedonia or Serbia or a few other countries, but I do know that a lot of my videos have been translated into Serbian and Korean and German, Spanish, and several other languages. So, you know, it really has taken off worldwide.
Can you let our viewers know where to find your videos? And well, while we're on the subject, is there anything else that you want to plug or let people know about?
Oh, okay. Well, the videos are on my YouTube channel. It's dmurphy25. That's dmurphy25. I've got a website. It's allegedlydave.com, but I've virtually lost the entire site. So what I've put up there is basically just a placeholder now. So I get some time to actually rebuild it. But there's a couple of things on there you might find interesting. But I'm doing some more research in, as I said, history, human history, and the Bible, and hopefully I'll be able to get the next video out. I've been dragging my feet on it, but yeah, I'm hoping to get the next video out soon.
Well, I was kind of hinting at something that you told me off air. Maybe I should keep my mouth shut.
Well, give me a hint, because I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Less than exotic destination that you might travel to with a...
Oh, okay. Yes. I'll tell the story then. I've been talking to a guy who's a retired businessman in America about flat Earth. So he was asking me question after question, and we were having this discussion. And we got into a heated, not argument, but a heated discussion about Antarctica. He knows of somebody who actually apparently went on an expedition to Antarctica, and this person disagrees with what we're saying. So we had quite a heated discussion about it. Then it went quiet for a little while. And a week or so later, he came back to me and said, I'm putting an expedition together to Antarctica, and I want you to come with me. He said he's got a team of about 20. He says it's going to be well funded. You know, I assume he's a retired businessman, obviously did well, and he's got money to spare. And he says he's got a lot of contacts in Washington DC, and he thinks he's going to be able to get the permits to do so. I doubt it, to be honest. I really doubt it. But you know, I said, you know, if you're going to do this, put my name down. I'm there. You know, so yeah, if he comes through, then I'm off to bloody Antarctica.
So it'll be allegedly Dave of Antarctica.
Yes. And the thing I'm gonna take down with me is a big compass, because you know the only proof that there is a South Pole is seeing that sucker spinning round. Yeah, because if you're in the South Pole, everywhere else is north. So, you know, unless I see something weird happening to that compass, then I'm not going to believe it.
I'd also recommend a coat.
Coat would be good, actually. Maybe some gloves.
Maybe some gloves. Hat, possibly.
A hat. That's a good idea. I've got to get you along to make the inventory. You know, just make sure I don't forget something. I
know what I'm doing.
Yeah, like underpants or something. Yeah, underpants. Should have bought some of them.
A camera.
Camera. God, you're good with all these ideas. Got to keep in touch with you.
Contact me. Well, with that, I'll say a massive thank you, first of all, to all of the people who have joined us in our live audience, and also to Dave Murphy. Thank you so much, Dave, for being on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
You're welcome, Nathan. Good talking to you.
Thanks very much. I've been Nathan Oakley. I'll see you all in the next video.